Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour, and I'm going to be reaching up a bit off camera, but I have tested this because I care about my imaginary BookTube friends, and it doesn't look all that bad. So we're going to deal with transwise books first. We have quite a few of them. We have, for instance, this cute little thing. This is Mildred Alders's book, A Hilltop on the Marne. Cute little book about taking I think there's a picture, taking an old country house. Yeah, there's the salon as taken from the front door. That's what you look as soon as you walk in the door. But there's a picture of the house itself. I know that. There's got to be one that starts this off. Maybe not. Oh, yes, there we go. Lovely little thing. And, of course, as you know from the title, you can tell from the name and the title, the major historical event that envelops the house on the Marne, Hilltop on the Marne. Really, really good. Then we have, this is a BookTube made me do it thing. I read this originally. I reviewed it originally when it originally came out in 2010. And then years and years and years later, I saw Britta Bowler talking about this on her channel and thought, I should find that again. Next time that crosses my path, I should grab it and reread it. It's this. It's by Elizabeth Tova Bailey, and it is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. Tiny little thing. Very lovely. It's about the story of a woman who is bedridden with an illness. Someone gives her a plant. It has a snail on it, living on it. And she concentrates on the snail as a way of taking her mind off her troubles, but then also just concentrates on the snail in general. And I thought it was lovely. I don't know where my review was. I might have done it for Open Letters Weekly and not for any paid journal. I had only one complaint about the book, which is that, as is true for so many books in the 21st century, the illness is fictional. And I don't see why you need that. I didn't see why you needed that, except, again, as an embryonic way. Back in 2010, it would have been embryonic. It's in full-fledged flower now. But an embryonic way of critic-proofing the book. Surely you won't criticize this book if I'm bedridden and in pain all the time from an illness that no doctor can detect. It isn't necessary. You could have had just that contemplative relationship with the little snail that someone gave you and that you encountered in just the same way without adding that element. But I still very much enjoyed the book, and I enjoyed it the second time around. BookTube Made Me Do It was good for me. Then we have Charles Eliot Norton. This is his Life of Dante. I found this at the Brattle. Let's get a frontispiece here since we don't have a... This is his Life of Dante. Charles Eliot Norton was a Dante scholar. He wrote a lot about Dante, translated a lot of Dante, and also features prominently in my own book collection. I have a huge amount by and about Charles Eliot Norton, but probably more than anybody who isn't a specialist has. So it felt right. Then we have, then we have a trade paperback that just made its appearance on this channel. When something is for sure a little book room book, I don't waste any time in putting it in here. I don't put it in some sort of waiting room elsewhere and think, I'll shift it around in time. That's how books go missing. No, this thing, I just recently found a copy of Gil Hyatt's book, Juvenal the Satirist, about the great Roman poet. It's not a translation, it's a study of Juvenal, and it's incredibly good. Amazingly personal, amazingly conversational, but also just sweepingly intelligent. So as soon as I found a copy just recently, I knew that I wanted it in this room. Then we have a tiny little trade paper. Oh, this thing. Okay, well, I put this in here. This might not survive. We've encountered a lot of things so far that might not survive. This is by Mary Farmer. I suspect that's a pseudonym. And this is a slim novella called The Runner and the Runaway, which was almost, for me, a cover by. Almost. Although the plot sounded interesting, too. The whole overarching gimmick of the Partition Club. So I got it and I read it. You got to read it. You got to give something to the gaze, and I enjoyed it. And I think it's stylishly done. This is, I'm pretty sure, self-published. Yeah, maryfarmer.net. So I'm pretty sure that Mary Farmer published this. I guess I'm supposed to say herself. If Mary Farmer is not a gay man in his mid-50s, then I'm the czar of all the Russias. But it was really, really good, considering what it is. And a lot of time and detail was put into making it look as good as it does. Not just the picture. Get your mind out of the gutter, but the product. Anyway, then we have another recent acquisition. This is the art book. Faden's The Art Book. We saw just recently, just the other day, we saw this thing. Their 500 self-portraits. And this is it's their best-selling thing by far. They did this in a large hardcover, they did this in a large trade paperback, and they did this in this little block that sold like crazy for them. In fact, it probably still does in museum gift shops all over the world. And it is a tour through pieces of art, good and bad, alphabetically by the name of the artist, which means that you get juxtapositions that you just don't see coming. And after all the time that I have paged through this, it's still amazing to me, that experience of, when we look at art books, we're so accustomed to seeing groups of artists together, and this blows that apart completely. You don't know, and aside from the last name, you don't know what's coming next. And that forces you to look at these things, not only in isolation, but next to each other. There's some bad artwork in here. Here are 2 pages of bad artwork, but there is also really good artwork as well. And you're forced to see it not only in isolation, page by page, but also in juxtaposition with art that you won't see it juxtaposed with, not only in art books, but in museums, which also group their artwork like by like in most cases, except for a few idiosyncratic museums that I've been to. Most of them will do that, so that if you're not interested or think you're not interested in French Impressionists, you can avoid them completely. I always thought that was a bit of a disservice that big museums do to their patrons, but this book doesn't do it at all. So I grab it whenever I see it. I don't see it all that often anymore. Oh, what I wouldn't give to grab a big hardcover of this thing, because these paperbacks, these are really nice, but they are not well made at all. I've had more than one copy of this book fall apart on me. And those are the Transwise books. Then we'll move on to the books on the shelves. The first one that we have is by W.S. Tryon. This is Parnassus Corner. This is a biography of James Fields, and also the corner bookstore here in Boston. Doesn't exist anymore. The building exists. The place, the corner exists. I could take you to it. And oh my, I could take you through it. Oh my, the basements, the attic, the upper rooms. I know every inch. Well, I probably don't know them anymore. These buildings have probably been sold and then resold and then resold and prefab partitioned all to hell and gone on the inside. Probably I wouldn't know my way around anymore. But if the renovators were smart, they've kept some parts intact in an attic, an old servant's quarter, or especially in the basement where it would be the easiest to do. And this was an area, a corner in Boston where James Fields and his partner and their literary adherents hung out every day, did an amazing amount of groundbreaking American publishing, and this is a fantastic book on the subject. It does not belong in this room. It does not belong. It is primarily a biography of Jim Fields, so it does not belong here. Much as I love it, I have a biography section. It belongs there. Then we have, this is Carolyn Tickner. She was part of Fields' literary cohorts. This is Glimpses of Authors. Wonderful old book where she goes through some of the authors that she knew or that it came through Tickner and Fields one way or another. Lew Wallace with his mega best-selling Ben-Hur, William Dean Howells, of course, Mark Twain, of course. She goes through glimpses of them, talking with them, little anecdotes of them, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book, not only on its own merits, but also because a lot of authors, a lot of full-scale, commissioned, 800-page, $1 million advance biographers of some of those figures don't know that books like this exist. So they're sweeping through their subject, anecdote by anecdote, detail by detail, and there's a book by somebody who knew them, they've never even seen a copy. Whereas with a resource like the Brattle Bookshop, it's easy to find books. I have probably 300 books like that are of the period, of the time, and that largely the anecdotes that are in them are usually absent from bigger lives of Hawthorne or, whoever. This next one is a Fall River reprint. I love this. This is their volume of the Jungle Book, Rudyard Kipling. Well, this has lots of other stuff in it too. It has these 3 things: the Jungle Book, the second Jungle Book, and Kim. It's the Fall River reprint. I love these books. Just love them. I think they're just wonderful. I have had them. They come in and out of my hands. I tend to get rid of them. I don't think I would anymore. If I got, for instance, the beautiful Fall River edition of H.G. Wells or the beautiful Fall River edition of Edgar Allan Poe, I think I'd probably keep them. And I will see them. The Brattle will provide. But this obviously does not belong where it is. It belongs in this room. This is my favorite hardcover Jungle Book, my favorite hardcover Kipling. But it doesn't belong here. I have a bookcase for classics, and it belongs there. Okay, then we have an ex-library copy of Philip Gibbs's book European Journey. This is illustrated. Got some rather nice black and white illustrations. Also, if I remember correctly, some that aren't so nice. Some that aren't particularly good. I don't know that I'm going to run across them. Most of the ones I'm seeing are location pictures of a little bit of Paris. And this is a travel guide from when did this originally come out? 1934, and it's chilling in that regard. It's wonderful. Gibbs is a wonderful raconteur, a wonderful storyteller, and a wonderful capture of people in the pen, very much like William Shirer in that regard. But it's also chilling because he visits Germany, and there's a moment in this book that a lot of other travel writers also wrote in one varying way or another, of this feeling of something chilling running up your spine as you leave Germany. Right as you're about to leave Germany, when the last checkpoint of the last gate on the last highway is still in front of you and you're coming towards it. The feeling of, I don't think Gibbs puts it this way, one other writer did, the feeling that suddenly I felt as though I had been in prison and now had a desperate longing. I can see the gate and it's open. I had a desperate longing and a desperate fear to get out of this prison. And the other writer that I'm thinking of, I can't remember her name at the moment, but she said, it struck me as absurd at the time because I'd had nothing but fun. I'd had wonderful hosts, wonderful meals, wonderful opera, wonderful concerts, wonderful reading, wonderful bookshops, wonderful weather. It felt absurd to feel that way, and yet I definitely felt that way. We all did in the car. We all felt that way. that suddenly this wasn't just another border crossing. This was a thing of desperation. And it didn't bear out. Of course, the border guards were perfectly nice, kind, perfectly professional, said goodbye to them. It was a feeling that had grown on their unconscious while they were touring around Germany, that something horrible was happening here, that there's a darkness just under the surface. Gibbs encounters it with persistent Nazi jar ringers. So he'd be at a restaurant, or he'd be on the sidewalk, or he'd be in the lobby of a cinema or something, and suddenly these brown shorted men would come by, shaking their cans, smilingly asking for donations to the Nazi cause. Happy and full of cheer and how are you and how wonderful that you're visiting our country, but Gibbs noticed it, and other travelers at the time did too, that no wasn't really an option. You could say no, but the cheery veneer would crack. And suddenly this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, very athletic, very good-looking young man who had been asking you for donations, asking everybody for donations, cheerily, laughingly, suddenly his face would go icy cold. And then he would smile again and move on. It was no big deal. There were no guns. That happens enough to you? Or Gibbs also meets Gehring, who's cheery in a way of someone who is holding a truncheon that you don't see. And that happens enough to you when you're in a country that is warmly welcoming you, and you might feel that way when you get to the border on your way out. Lots of people did. Lots of people recorded that in their travel logs. There's a lot of other things in that book, but that was really memorable. Oh, okay, we have more travel writing. This is The Travels of Mark Twain by Charles Neater. This is an anthology of bits and pieces from Twain's travel writing. No illustrations that I remember, no, but a terrific book. There have been many anthologies of Twain's travel writing, and this is my favorite one by a guy who knew this author and his writing backwards and forwards. I get lost in Twain's writing, his travel writing. Although, sitting where I am with my face staring right at the Penguin wall, I realized that we did not encounter any Mark Twain in my Penguin Classics collection, and that can't be true. I have Innocents Abroad, I have Roughing It, I have all sorts of things in Penguin from Mark Twain. They must be somewhere else. I thought all the Penguins were right here. But anyway, this is my favorite volume anyway, even if I do have the Penguins. This is more travel writing. This is My Wilderness, East to Katahdin. And this is by William Douglas, who was a really enjoyable, really, really accessible, personal travel writer and also a justice on the Supreme Court. I wonder if we have a picture. Yes, we do. There he is in his justice robes, looking all wise and stately. He was neither. He was not. He was not wise and stately, but he could really write, even when he chose to. I don't quite remember if this is one of the books that he chose to write or that he chose only to put his name on. I don't remember, but it is full of illustrations. The illustrations are by Francis Lee Jacques. Somebody clipped in mimeographed review. That wasn't me, but I'm glad it's in there. I'm always glad when I encounter those, and I do them myself now. But there's all sorts of black and white spot illustrations that are really neat. I used to have this. I used to have Easter Katahdin in a mass market paperback that I really enjoyed, but it was an old, stiff mass market paperback, and it fell apart on me. I was happy to find the hardcover. Okay, then we have a book from Vermont. We have, this is a book from Vermont, but I've had this many times before. And this is a leather-bound treasury edition of the complete Sherlock Holmes with the Sidney Paget illustrations all throughout in the double columns and whatnot. And as I've mentioned before, I found many, many different reprints of this. This volume with the Sidney Paget, the original illustrations from the Strand magazine, has been reprinted a million times. And I've seen lots of copies of this, too. But as I've pointed out many times before, not all of these printings are the same. Most of them misprint the Sidney Paget illustrations so that they are dark, so that you can't really make out the details, the line work, the shadows. And this volume doesn't. And that's totally random chance. You don't know whether or not you have to examine it before you get it. You can't just, for instance, unfortunately, if you were ordering a book online, if you're ordering a copy of this online, you'd be advised not to. Because there's a 50-50 chance that the pictures, which is a big percentage of why you would get this edition as opposed to other editions, won't be good, won't be reproduced well. I had this exact thing, a copy of this red leather-bound edition of this that I found at the Brattle, and I grabbed it without paying any attention to my own advice, and the illustrations weren't good. I found this copy up in Vermont, and the illustrations were really good. So it got transferred to this library. Let's see here. Oh no, here we have a doomed item. This item is doomed. Oh no, I feel so sorry for you. Well, there's a ton of stuff in here. I will take it all out and transfer it. This is a hardcover copy of Original Sin by P.D. James. It's a very nice hardcover copy. It has the deckled edges, but it's the American copy. And one of you very kindly sent me the UK hardcover of Original Sin. I want that instead, and I don't want both. So this thing is here because I haven't incorporated those P.D. James volumes into this library. I'm currently reading them, so I haven't put them in here yet. They've got to find room, and while I'm at it, they might as well all be together. I've got the Murder Room and Devices and Desires. They should probably be together with those, so that shelf will have to be rearranged. But this thing, I'm not going to put it back on the shelf. It isn't staying in here. I don't want two hardcover copies of Original Sin. Okay, then we have a self-published book. This is by K.C. Warwick. Strongly suggest that might not be the author's real name. But this is Prove a Villain. And as you can see from the title, this is a self-published novel about Christopher Marlowe, the super hottie. This is for the gays. This is one of many, many Marlowe novels that I have. For a while there, I don't know if he still is, but for a while there, he was the absolute darling of the self-published historical fiction circuit. He was one that you went to over and over again. For obvious reasons, right? I mean, He's a writer of toweringly great stature. We know to a strong likelihood that he probably had a very vigorous and maybe a dangerous second life as an intelligence operative. And he said himself that he favored boys, that he was not straight. That could easily have been Christopher Hitchens-style provocation to the powers that be. It could easily have been a lie put forward by the person who said that detail under torture. It could be true. We don't know, but there's a chance of it. So you've got all of that to draw you towards him and invest him an entirely second life. There's tons and tons of books like that about Marlowe that stress the intelligence operative things. What's the name of the author of one of the best series? Trow, Trow, MJ or something like that. Trow is his last name. He did, as far as I know, a bunch of books on Marlowe, with Marlowe as the protagonist, and they're all really, really good. And this was really, really good. No, it probably doesn't have the same cover. Probably isn't still in print. Weird to think that this might be a friend of the author, or the author himself. You know, when you're doing a self-published book, you have to cut costs as much as you can anywhere without making a cheap product. This is a good-looking product, but I doubt that's a model. I doubt that person is hired. this was probably done by the author, and that's kind of interesting. Those kinds of details for self-published books always interest me. And then we'll finish up with Gordon Dickson with the Dorsai books. I've mentioned him many times on this channel. He's an old science fiction author, wrote a ton of stuff. And probably his most successful idea and some of his most popular books involve the Dorsai. It's a future Earth solar system society in which there are splinter societies of all kinds who specialize in one thing or another and put that specialty out on the intercommerce market. And the planet Dorsai is a barren, rocky place without any kind of superabundance to market. No real good crops, nothing else. So the Dorsai, the people of the Dorsai, the cantons of the Dorsai, market themselves as mercenaries, as military men and women, strategists, commanders, to all the other worlds. And it's a really good idea. Gordon Dickson had a kind of He-Man military fetish, and he works it out really well in the Dorsai books. And the standard line in the Dorsai books is that although the Dorsai is small, if its citizens pulled into the borders of its world and decided to make war on the rest of all the planets, they would lose. The other planets would lose. That's how formidable the Dorsai are. And I like a lot of the Dorsai books. Then Gordon Dickson got himself a tame graduate student who started analyzing the deeper significance of his work. That's always deadly. For a science fiction pulp author, that's deadly. He should have fired her right away. Instead, he started believing her, God help us all, and the books got 10 times longer and they became unreadable. But a lot of the early Dorsai books are terrific, and I believe they represent the height of his art. And I have a couple of them here. I have Lost Dorsai in the trade paperback here, which is full of illustrations. They're all throughout here. And the main part of this book is a natural storyline, which is that if you create a society like the Dorsai, what happens if you get a pacifist? What would a Dorsai pacifist be like? And there's a whole story that revolves around it. I love this in the trade paperback. This trade paperback is well put together. It's a lot more durable than my mass markets. Although I have all these in ebook now anyway, so I don't have to worry about it. And then the Dorsai Companion. This is a bunch of stuff that Dickson wrote about the Dorsai, and also I think individual works as well. Here we get a map of the worlds involved, and there are all the physical details of the worlds involved. Interesting. Does this have? Yes, this has short stories. So it has Amanda Morgan. It has all of Lost Dorsai is in here. Okay, great. So this is mostly a collection of Dorsai short stories, but it does have some expository stuff in it. And I don't know that I've ever seen it in hardcover. It was never made, I think, in mass market paperback. That's the only form I've ever seen it in, so I kept it. And then slightly bigger, The Spirit of Dorsai. Again, in a heavily illustrated trade paperback where you've got illustrations all throughout. And this is 2 novellas, which I see now are also in the Dorsai Companion, so I have them twice. This is 2 novellas, and one of those novellas is a Dorsai novella called Brothers, that I think is the pinnacle of Dickson's work. At least non-collaborative work. I think Brothers is just wonderful. I've talked about it many times on this channel. A little bit incomplete here, just to finish up, a little bit incomplete, these 3 Gordon Dickson trade paperbacks that make me wish either that I'm sure that all the other classic Gordon Dickson Dorsai books were also made in those trade paperback editions. I'm sure that Dorsai, for instance, the book Dorsai was. I'm pretty sure that Soldier Ask Not was the pinnacle of Gordon Dickson's long-form prose. Maybe Tactics of Mistake or Necromancer. I just have never seen them. That's all. I've never seen those in the larger format. So my Gordon Dickson, the Dorsai books that I really want to keep, the ones that I revisit, lost track of how many times I've reread Brothers. I have those in a weird hodgepodge of different sizes and editions. I guess I'm just waiting. The Brattle will provide other Dorsai books in this size. And until then, I'll just make do with the ebooks. But anyway, that is this shelf. With watery New England light here, but that is this shelf. Now, the next one won't work for reaching. So the next one I'm going to have to reposition the camera, but we'll leave that to tomorrow. We'll see how that works tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.